In this scene, we're at Camp David, the presidential retreat where U.S. President Benjamin Asher is staying. Secret Service agent Mike Banning is sparring with the president. Even though Benjamin is the president, Mike doesn't go easy on him. He lands solid punches without hesitation because the two have become close friends over the years. A few moments later, another Secret Service agent, Dave Forbes, reminds President Asher that it's almost time for the Christmas banquet and fundraising event. Mike then checks on the president and the First Lady as they get ready to leave. After that, he visits Connor, the president's young son, who is also expected to attend. As the presidential convoy heads toward the fundraiser, heavy snow begins to fall. While crossing a bridge, the presidential limousine hits a deer, loses control, and spins across the icy road. The limo slides toward the edge of the bridge and hangs there dangerously. Mike and several Secret Service agents rush in to help. They manage to reach the vehicle, but the First Lady's door is jammed shut while the limo continues slipping closer to the edge. The agents desperately try to hold it in place, but they can't stop it from sliding. Realizing there's no time left, Mike makes a split-second decision. He cuts President Asher free from his seatbelt and pulls him to safety. Sadly, he can't save the First Lady. The limousine falls off the bridge with her still trapped inside, leaving Mike devastated. 18 months later, Mike has been reassigned to the Treasury Department and is no longer part of the president's security team. At home, his wife Leah notices that he's distracted and barely paying attention to her. Frustrated, she confronts him, and Mike promises they'll finally take the vacation they've been putting off. Not long after, Mike meets with Secret Service Director Lynn Jacobs. She knows he's still carrying the guilt of losing the First Lady and reminds him that he made the only choice he could. Even President Asher understands that. Still, Mike hopes that one day he'll earn his place back on the presidential detail and protect the president until the end of his term. Meanwhile, President Asher spends some time with Connor, who would rather go to the beach than return to Camp David for another retreat. Benjamin offers to take him out for ice cream, but he's forced to cancel because an important meeting is about to begin. He joins Secretary of Defense Ruth McMillan, House Speaker Alan Trumbull, and Vice President Charles Rodriguez to prepare for talks with the South Korean Prime Minister. Soon, Prime Minister Lee and his aide, Kang Yon-sak, arrive at the White House. At the same time, an unidentified aircraft illegally enters U.S. airspace. When two American fighter jets attempt to make contact, the aircraft suddenly shoots them down and heads straight for Washington, D.C. President Asher is immediately rushed out of the meeting and escorted to the presidential bunker. Moments later, the enemy aircraft flies low over Washington and begins attacking the city. Civilians run through the streets in panic as explosions erupt everywhere. From his office, Mike sees the chaos and immediately races outside to help protect innocent people. Eventually, the plane is finally destroyed, but not before one of its wings crashes into the Washington Monument. The impact causes the top of the monument to collapse, killing several tourists below. As the destruction continues, Mike notices armed mercenaries disguised as civilians launching a coordinated ground assault on the White House. They quickly overwhelm the security forces guarding the building. Inside the presidential bunker, Kang and his men suddenly turn on the president's security team. With help from Secret Service agent Dave Forbes, who is secretly working with them, they take President Asher and the other government officials hostage. It soon becomes clear that the attack has been carefully planned. While North Korean terrorists seize control of the White House from the inside, more attackers continue fighting outside. Mike manages to fight his way into the White House after the terrorists have taken over, eliminating several of them as he moves through the building. During the assault, Agent Roma sends out one final radio message: Olympus has fallen, the emergency code confirming that the White House has been captured. Moments later, he is killed. Shortly after taking control, the terrorists establish a video call with the Pentagon to deliver their demands. Kang executes Prime Minister Lee during a live video call, then appears on screen to announce that President Asher and several top U.S. officials are now his hostages. He orders the Pentagon to pull all military forces away from the White House. With the hostages' lives at risk, the Pentagon has no choice but to obey. Meanwhile, Mike quietly fights his way through the White House, taking out several terrorists and disabling the building's internal surveillance system. At the Pentagon, House Speaker Alan Trumbull is sworn in as acting president. Around the same time, Mike manages to access President Asher's secure satellite phone and contacts the Emergency Command Center. Lynn Jacobs tells him that the president and the other officials are being held inside the bunker, and that Connor is still missing. Soon after, Kong contacts the Pentagon again and demands that acting President Trumbull withdraw the U.S. 7th Fleet and all American forces from the Korean Peninsula. His goal is to eliminate any U.S. resistance before launching another Korean War. He warns that if Trumbull refuses, the hostages in the bunker will be executed one by one. Kong also reveals that he's after the Cerberus system, a highly classified protocol that controls America's nuclear weapons. Activating it requires 3 separate access codes, known only to President Asher, Secretary of Defense Ruth McMillan, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Admiral Joseph Honig, all of whom are trapped inside the bunker. To save his life, President Asher reluctantly orders Admiral Honig to surrender his access code, and the Admiral obeys. The Pentagon then informs Mike about Kang's plan and confirms that the terrorists have already obtained the first Cerberus code. Trumbull orders Mike to find Connor and get him out of the White House before the terrorists discover him. He believes Kong will use the president's son as leverage to force Asher to hand over the final code. Inside the White House, Lim tracks Mike's every move through the security cameras, prompting Kong to send more gunmen after him. Mike searches room after room until he finally finds Connor hiding inside a secret wall compartment. He quickly sneaks the boy through the ventilation system, where U.S. soldiers safely receive him outside the building. After getting Connor to safety, Mike resumes his assault on the terrorists. He captures one of them and forces him to talk. That's when he learns their leader is Kang Yonsak, the head of a militant group called Koreans for United Freedom. Mike immediately relays the information to the Pentagon, where officials confirm that Kong is one of the world's most wanted terrorists. They also uncover his background, including the fact that his mother was killed by an American landmine, an event that fueled his hatred for the United States. Not long after, Kong hijacks Mike's radio frequency and mocks him for failing to save the First Lady. Mike refuses to be intimidated and promises that he'll kill Kong before this is over. He also reveals that Connor has already escaped the White House, which enrages Kong. In response, Kong orders Dave Forbes to hunt Mike down and eliminate him. Back in the bunker, Kong tries to force Secretary of Defense Ruth McMillan to reveal her Cerberus access code. She refuses, even under intense torture. Unable to watch her suffer any longer, President Asher finally orders her to give Kong the code. Reluctantly, she obeys, giving the terrorists another key piece they need to activate the Cerberus system. As Mike continues fighting through the White House, he eventually runs into Dave Forbes. At first, Forbes pretends to still be loyal to the Secret Service. But the moment he casually mentions Kong by name, Mike realizes he's been working with the terrorists all along. Without hesitation, Mike attacks him and forces him to make a report to Kong. Mike forces Forbes to radio Kong and falsely report that he's already killed Mike. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, Army Chief of Staff General Edward Clegg notices that only a handful of terrorists are guarding the White House rooftop. As the SEAL helicopters approach, Kong activates the advanced Hydra 6 anti-aircraft defense system. Within seconds, it shoots down 2 helicopters, forcing Trumbull to abort the mission. Furious over the failed assault, Kong retaliates by executing Charlie in front of everyone. He then threatens to kill President Asher unless Trumbull agrees to all of his demands. Kong also demands a fully fueled helicopter to guarantee his escape. Trumbull contacts Mike and tells him he has only 30 minutes to rescue the president before the terrorists are allowed to leave. Mike calls Kong directly, vows to kill him, and cuts off the terrorists' video connection with the Pentagon. Knowing time is running out, Kong drags Secretary of Defense Ruth McMillan outside the White House and prepares to execute her in front of the media. Before he can pull the trigger, Mike launches a surprise attack, forcing Kong and his men back into the bunker. U.S. forces quickly rescue McMillan, but Trumbull ultimately gives in to Kang's demands. He orders the withdrawal of the 7th Fleet and all American troops from the Korean demilitarized zone, while also sending the requested helicopter to the White House. Kong then puts several of his remaining men and the surviving hostages onto the helicopter. They're all dressed alike and wearing masks to fool the American soldiers into thinking Kong is among them. Moments after takeoff, the helicopter suddenly explodes, killing everyone on board. Most people believe President Asher has died in the blast, but Mike isn't convinced. He tells the Pentagon that it's a decoy and heads straight for the bunker, believing Kong and the president are still inside. Meanwhile, Kong uses the 2 Cerberus access codes he's collected to activate America's nuclear defense system. If the launch isn't stopped, millions of people could die and the country would suffer catastrophic destruction. As Kong and his last remaining men prepare to escape, Mike ambushes them, eliminating everyone except Kong. Mike finally comes face to face with Kong in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. At the perfect moment, President Asher distracts Kong just long enough for Mike to gain the upper hand and kill him. Mike immediately rushes to the wounded president and tries to stop the bleeding. Asher tells him that Cerberus has already been activated, leaving Mike with only minutes to stop the launch. Working together with acting President Trumbull and the team at the Pentagon, Mike manages to shut down the Cerberus system just in time, preventing a devastating nuclear disaster. He then carries President Asher out of the White House so he can receive emergency medical treatment. Everyone at the Pentagon erupts in celebration, relieved that both the president and the nation have been saved. Later, President Asher is reunited with his son, Connor, outside the White House. Mike embraces his wife, Leah, grateful that the nightmare is finally over. In the final scene, President Asher addresses the nation, promising that the United States will recover from the attack and emerge even stronger than before. As a reward for his bravery, Mike is reinstated as head of the president's Secret Service detail, and President Asher proudly shakes his hand, thanking him for saving both his life and the country. What makes Olympus Has Fallen so gripping isn't just the nonstop action, it's how one man refuses to give up when his country needs him most. Mike Banning isn't a superhero. He's a loyal Secret Service agent carrying the guilt of a past failure, but when the White House falls into enemy hands, he risks everything to make things right. The movie combines intense firefights, emotional stakes, and high-pressure decisions that keep you hooked until the very end. If you enjoy action movies with relentless suspense, powerful hero moments, and a race against time to save an entire nation, this is definitely one worth watching.